We are very excited today to welcome as our special guest Ben Kolak. Ben hails from Chicago and is a documentary cinematographer and director focused on social change, education, and the arts. His first feature, Scrappers, made critic Roger Ebert's list of the top documentaries for 2010, and he has worked for PBS, Netflix, the New York Times Daily 360. His works appeared on NPR, The New Yorker, Hulu, Univision, just a huge list of credits. And Ben has also worked extensively with stereoscopic 3D, so I'm sure there'll be some questions about that. He's also a licensed and insured UAV drone operator, so a huge range of subjects of expertise. Ben, welcome to Office Hours. Great to have you here.
Thank you. So excited and honored to be here. It was really incredible to discover this community in the last week or two, thanks to a fellow Chicagoan, Kyle. Hopefully I can be of value to some of your audience.
I absolutely believe you can be, and it's great to have you here. You know, we all love a good origin story. So can you take us back a little bit and tell us how you came up into this crazy world of cinematography and production?
Yeah, I grew up, I feel like many people in the AV media spaces making stuff. And then when I went to college, kind of explored a lot of different groups, and definitely the space where I felt most at home was with filmmakers. And I feel in a lot of ways it was a community not unlike you all have here, where everyone's working on different projects and would come together to kind of support one another. And about maybe my second or third year into college, fellow students started asking me can you record my performance or whatnot? And at first I was like, no, I'd rather just make my own short films. And then they would come back and say, I got, some money, can pay you. And that was when the light bulb went off that wow, this is something that I could monetize and really go from a fun hobby that I'm doing on the side while I'm studying to the main thing I'm doing. And so really my practice has grown out of that, where I've continued to work really much more in I think the kind of grassroots spaces where I'm kind of wearing a lot of different hats and kind of helping different individuals or organizations maybe do stuff with media they haven't done before. And so that's often kind of coming up with duct tape solutions to make things work. And sometimes I've also been a privilege to be on spaces and productions where there are a lot of resources, which then is always such a privilege to have all that support and really just be able to think about the content, I suppose.
What was it about documentary filmmaking specifically that kind of drew you in? What were your passions?
Definitely going back to a high school, kind of in the late 90s, early aughts, was really involved in activism. And so that kind of got me into a documentary kind of as a social change mechanism. And certainly even with a lot of the fiction projects I made as a college student and thereafter, there'd often be kind of a movement politics angle to it. So I think that's been a big part of it. And I'm so lucky now to have a small team at my production company, Truth and Documentary, and that's definitely a big part of the component for other folks there, where we really just work with nonprofits, artists, other documentary filmmakers, as we find that's just a lot more meaningful, and the kind of culture and space that for us we really enjoy, I suppose.
Since you haven't been able to work, at least in most of your career, with those big Hollywood budgets, what are some of the most important things, the changes you've seen happen in terms of the production industry that has allowed a voice like yours to be able to successfully reach people?
Yeah, the changes are really striking. I mean, I started working a bit on 16 millimeter when I was a student, and just the degree of intentionality necessary in that format, as far as mapping out every shot, thinking about the light. On the one hand, it's so great to get structured and learn, what it takes to compose a great frame, and then from there really transition into mini DV, which was just so liberating, and that's what we shot a lot of my first feature documentary Scrappers on. But there was also just such limitations so far as what you could make look good. Anything with like kind of a wide dynamic range would just be like such a struggle, and so much of that film was shot outside that was often an issue. And then certainly moving into the availability of DSLRs, and then being able to get the same kind of cinematic look where you can really control depth of field, and then over the past 10 years with the dynamic range, just improving color accuracy. It's just been incredible where, now there's really like no barrier so far as the technical abilities with almost what you can do on a consumer camera, and really so much of the work is in the conceptual side of it. What kind of image are you going to put in there that's going to engage audiences and speak to the specific needs of that project, what they want to show and how and why. So I feel like every year or two I need to kind of reevaluate everything I do to stay up to speed with kind of like what kind of looks, what kind of price points are kind of par for the course.
I understand you have some examples of some of the stuff you shot recently, and so I would love to see some of your work. Can you do that?
All right, I'll try.
Okay. Screen share time.
Yeah, I think I've got it lined up in a way that will work. Yeah.
Okay, we're seeing a big number one on the screen. Great.
Yeah, so this is something I put together kind of in lieu of a reel, with just 9 shots from different projects that released last year, and for a range of different clients, situations, and most of them were shot on a Panasonic S1H, which is the DSLR I most like. I think its biggest limitation is the rolling shutter in comparison to other DSLRs, but I really like how dependable it is with not overheating, which I know is a big challenge with a lot of the Canon DSLRs, and just the file format and the way the kind of screen and form factor works. I really like better than the Sony. Although I definitely agree that the Sony color looks a little nicer. But I can kind of scrub through this. So this first shot is for one of the clients I work with the most. It's the Divinity School at the University of Chicago, which is basically a center that studies religion kind of across the spectrum. And so was filming a conversation with this Sufi, basically poet, shaman from North Africa that they brought in to talk about his practice. And so had it on a old school device, a Micro Dolly Hollywood, which has been around, I think, since the 90s, but it's a foldable curved track, which you can set up in like 10 minutes. And I think it's just such a great tool. And so I had, I'm pretty sure the Zeiss 70-200 cinema lens on this, and was going back and forth between the interview subject and the interviewer, kind of panning up and down, and could kind of reframe on the hands, on the face. It was just a really nice setup.
It's a beautiful picture. I'm surprised that it's in square format. Are you working a lot in square?
Oh, No, so I just made this square to share on Instagram and LinkedIn and
okay, so these are crops out of the
yeah, they are. And sorry, yeah, I could have put together another example of this with other format. But yeah, I mean,
fine. I was just curious as to whether you were getting more requests from clients to do things that are for social and that they want a delivery in square as well as the 16:9. Or
they definitely do. They definitely do. That's so common now where, really so much of when we're filming, we're thinking about it in both formats. And that's another thing I really like actually about the S1H. The native, the chip is 3x2 and it has a video recording option that is 3x2 kind of full gate, I guess would be like more the cinema term. So we will film that a lot and then do a 16:9 crop when they're presenting stuff like at an event, like at a benefit, a dinner or something, which is really common. But then they'll also want to leverage that same content over the course of the year to put out 9:16 videos on their social channels. And so if we film, something like that in that format.
When you monitor, do you have monitors that are masked for those things? Do you try to look at both 9:16, 16:9, square, and
more conceptually? No, but I don't have them both marked off because again, most of the times when we're filming like that, it's just me or one of my colleagues kind of wearing all the hats, so we don't have like a whole AC monitoring director situation most of the. Okay,
before we go to the next one, we're going to try to get a couple of, because we're a audience-driven question show. So, Courtney, are you there? Can you toss a couple of questions in and we'll let Ben field them and then we'll come right back to more demo?
You bet. First question comes in from Kyle Hammond in Chicago, Illinois. He says, when will the From Rails to Trails documentary be released, and do you have a distribution platform for it?
Yeah, that's great. So the project that I've filmed on the most this past year is a documentary called From Rails to Trails. A really talented, veteran producer director, Dan Protest out of Chicago is leading it, and I'm really lucky to be able to work with him on it. But it tells the story of the Rails to Trails movement. So converting.
He may have dropped out.
He just took one of those trails.
Exactly. Unfortunately,
the
a hard
Rails
left
trails
turn.
while he's working on getting his way back in. It's a pretty amazing program. I don't know what they're shooting. I know that there was a rail system that ran right past our house, down our hill, and it is I don't know. I can now not think about how long ago. I remember there being rails there. I don't remember how long the rails have been gone. I do remember that there was an enormous amount of ties, the railroad ties.
Oh, yeah, the cross members.
They were laying on the side, and all of us, there were a lot of us that had walkways, because everyone went down there and grabbed all the ties. It was like there's a lot of ties laying around here.
Landscape material for free.
Oh my gosh, everyone was like, we can add bricks to ties, we can put the ties in the garden, we can put the ties, there were ties everywhere because they just left the tie. They took the steel and left the ties. Partially because I think it's hard back then. No one knew what to do with them because they were all soaked in creosote, and so so they were they weren't like ties that you get at Home Depot.
Great for anti-insect, but
sticky.
So that documentary was on converting old railroad right-of-ways to running trails.
So what they did is they had all these right-of-ways. I mean, I don't know what the documentary is about because he disappeared too quickly. But what I can tell you is the Rails to Trails, where I grew up, they were taking all these railroad lines that were no longer being used at capacity and just ripping all the rails out and just, and now there are these incredible walkways. We used to ride our horse. I don't know if we're supposed to say that or we were supposed to, but we used to ride our horses down them all the time. So I had horses that I took out.
Statute of limitations.
When I grew up, we had like 11 horses, and half of my summer was just riding the mares to make sure that they were in shape. And so I take them down there and walk through there. And so
did you carry little bags to clean up after yourself?
No, I did not. No, I did not. I didn't think of. I'll be honest with you. And I lived in the country. We didn't really think very hard about that. And even here where I live now, I don't think people think very hard about it either on the trails. So you have to kind of just work around those things. Yeah,
well, the urban police who are mounted sometimes I think they have something they fit on their horses to keep that from becoming a major problem. It's
yeah,
odd,
we didn't
but
anyway. We've gone too far south. So anyway,
yes.
so the it's a really cool program, because it opened up an enormous number of opportunities to take some great walks. So and again to wander down, because all those rails just go. A lot of times they're going down beside rivers, and they kind of, because a lot of them wound along a river. To get there, because that happened to be a good place to put a train.
So much of those right-of-ways. I mean, I remember back in Phoenix where I grew up, they used to have a trolley system, and then at some point they stopped using it. I don't know whether it was political or whatever, but there were rights-of-way that was suddenly just abandoned. So that people are changing these into something more useful and more contemporary.
Yeah.
It's undoubtedly a good thing. I also remember being in places like Chicago where they have an abandoned L track or something like that. And people are so creative.
They've turned them into parks now, elevated parks that run through the city. Yeah, it's great.
Isn't that and I'm going to make myself look foolish here with people watching from New York. Isn't the High Line, isn't that what that used to be?
I think there's a couple in New York, and I know Chicago has done it, and they're abandoned freeways. I remember seeing the abandoned freeways in San Francisco near you. Remember that freeway that just kind of went through Pier 49 and that kind of area and just stopped in the middle of nowhere, whether they ran out of money or whatever. I think they finally tore it down, but it was abandoned for a long time.
When he said he was doing the rails and trails, what I immediately thought of, next time I go back home, I'm going to bring a drone and just fly through that. I think that'd be really a cool shot, is just to kind of just go straight down the rails, and just follow it along. It'd be a fun drone shot, and
there's so many old railroad standards. I mean, we used to have narrow gauge. I remember had one of my nicest vacations taking the narrow gauge from Durango to Silverton, and then they were talking to us about how they had changed the distance between the tracks, and some of the new trains don't run on the old tracks, and so all those right-of-ways still have the old, out-of-date system.
They have this rail system in a park here outside of Berkeley, and I thought it would be silly, to go on this little train. It's like at the little cars, and everyone, you feel like giants inside of the little cars. But my daughter and I went up there on a Saturday, and it was not rainy, but very moist, and going through the Tilden Park. Tilden Park is the park that has them, and it's way up there. And you're driving up, going, "This better be good." Like I'm driving all the way up here, and I remember I was running out of gas
going up.
I was like, I don't even know if I have enough gas to get home, and so this better work. And it was amazing. Like it was just a really, really fun, fun thing. But it was one of those tiny little trains that they have up there. But my grandfather, I mean, what really happened was the highway system, right? My grandfather. In the 40s, late 40s, early 50s, took the train to Pittsburgh. Like, it was 35 miles away, and you'd get on the train would stop right where the Iron Bridge went across the road, and there was a stop that was probably only 10 minutes or a 10-minute walk from his house, or a 15-minute walk from his house, and you go down there and get on the train and take it to the city, and he did that every day, and then but even he is the one that decided that. When they started building the highways, they're like, we should build a highway that goes from Pittsburgh to where he lives. And now there's a Route 28, if people are in Pittsburgh. It's actually named the Alexander H. Lindsay Highway.
Nice.
He spent 44 years working on that thing. But but those highways, as soon as they started serving those areas, that's when the trains became not viable anymore, because they weren't picking everybody up. With these huge infrastructure, whether it's cable TV or electricity or all these things, as soon as it gets below us, it doesn't have to drop 80% to say, oh, it's not worth it. It only has to drop like 10% or 20% or maybe 30% before you just go, well, this doesn't pencil out anymore.
Pencil out so then you start as a profit maker.
And that's the same thing. That lesson there is the same thing we're seeing in other, when you see the media industry, whether it's theatrical releases, all these other things that people think, well, it's not going to go away. It doesn't have to go away before it fails, because it just has to no longer be profitable, and that's the real challenge.
Just down the street from where I used to live in Scottsdale, Arizona, they have McCormick Railroad Park, and I'm always impressed by the people who love the old rail systems, love them with a passion that is almost unmatched in anything else I've seen. They had just scores of volunteers, and they run that railroad for kids and for families and for picnics 24/7. But the amount of time and energy the people who are just romantically fascinated with rail travel.
And unfortunately, we don't get to really experience great rail travel because we're here in the United States. We have almost. I mean, we have a little bit of rail, but it is rail is my favorite thing to do when I'm overseas. You know, when I'm in Europe or Japan or other places. You know, I love taking.
Oh, it is so nice. One of my favorite things to do. When I used to go up to Los Angeles once a month to be part of a group up there, I used to take the Pacific Surfliner, and it's just magnificent to be able to sit back in a nice train and just roll up the coastline.
We had a job where I was in London, then I was in Paris, and then I was in Germany, then back to Brussels, and then off to Amsterdam, and I never got in a car. And we were you just get on some train, and there you are, and it was comfortable. And we have been talking so much about trains, and I didn't know we were about to give. I was like, I don't know how. Like you'll have to go back and look. I mean, we just filled a lot of time about trains and rail systems.
We've been in the mountains of Colorado. We've been across to Europe.
Yeah, we were talking about European trains. I was talking about the fact that you were talking about the rails to trails.
Right.
They did that right below where I grew up in the middle of nowhere, and
cool.
they converted it. I was saying that I can't remember when they did it. It was so long ago. It might have been 40 years ago or more.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing program.
Yeah. So the first trail was actually not far from where I am now in Wisconsin, the Elroy Sparta Trail going across Wisconsin. And then there was another one in Chicago, the Illinois Prairie Path. And those kind of laid the groundwork for a model when railroads abandon tracks. What do you do with it? Does the property go back to the adjacent landowners? Is there another way it can be used for the public right away? And so a lot of people really like them.
We were talking about the fact that it'd be really fun to do drone shots. Did you do any drone shots, like flying down through since you're a drone operator, it seems like that's the perfect thing to do, is to be flying through the path, down the path. Yeah, no?
Definitely it did. Definitely one of the places it worked best was on a trail in Burlington, Vermont, that goes out into Lake Champlain, and it to get some kind of next to it. I'm not one of those really impressive POV drone operators that can fly through stuff quickly. I'm more get something up quick to get a cool landscape shot. So a lot of the shots on the trail, actually I shot on a Segway, the 9-bot one that you can steer with your knees. And so that way I have both hands free to operate the camera. And so as far as getting being able to see what's on the path, and then also being able to film people riding, a number of the interviews in the film, I filmed while people were biking on the Segway, either looking behind my shoulder or sometimes going backwards. So yeah, it was a really great opportunity to invest in that gear. I have a couple of Segways now, and then to learn that skill. So yeah. But it's a really exciting project that will be, it's being distributed through American Public Television, which is out of DC. They partner with a lot of different groups, organizations to basically make programming available to public TV stations across the country. Yeah. And so the plan is now in the spring it'll be there. And the director producer that I was mentioning before my laptop overheated has done a number of other projects with them. There's a figure out of Chicago, Jeffrey Bear, that has done a number of shows about 10 things that changed America and whatnot. So this is kind of in the same kind of style mold as that, but really taking rail trails as a subject matter. So it's been awesome. I've been really lucky to work on it and to get to travel across the country filming for it. So
Courtney Gooden here has a question for you. Courtney?
Yeah. Couple of questions related to this question. You just mentioned being on your Segway and shooting backwards to people that are riding bikes down the trail. What do you use for doing audio with that? Do you have an audio sound mixer with a fishpole that's on a separate Segway that's following along with you, or do you stop and put wireless mics on the people, or do you just use on-camera microphones for your audio for your interviews?
Great question. So I'll usually have a directional mic, and I have a Sennheiser K6 ME66 on the camera that's getting whatever I'm pointed at, and then we'll put wireless lavs on the subjects. And I'm still kind of old school. I really like electrosonics, so we'll put those on the subjects, and I like the COS 11. The Sanken COS 11D lav. Yeah, and so then sometimes I'll carry a sound recorder, and I have a Zoom F8N. When we were filming in Seattle, which you may know is a rainy place, and the day we filmed, it set a record for most rainfall that day. And so my camera was good, but my audio recorder got a little bit fried. So now only half the channels record, believe it or not. So I need to either, I don't know. It made it through the end of that show, fortunately. But yeah, I think I'm either going to get the newer F8N that I know also records 32-bit, or maybe I'll move up to one of the sound devices options, or I don't know. Maybe you all have a recommendation for me for what sound recorder I should move over to.
Oh, we have recommendations for everything.
Well, I was going to say, too, also maybe a fan to help my laptop cool to avoid or should you have any favorite cooling
ice
devices?
Portable ice pack. Right. So you always record double system sound, or do you ever just record in camera?
Sometimes I do in camera, yeah. So for that job and some other ones, sometimes I'll go. They make like a XLR adapter for the Panasonic DSLR, so sometimes I'll use that for
directly in.
Yeah, for things like that though, that's really kind of a plastic piece. It's not sturdy enough for when I'm riding a Segway with the camera with a grip. So I'll just go the 1/8 inch in with the directional mic, and then we'll have audio going to another device. And something I really like about the Panasonic DSLRs as well is through the flash input, it can actually take timecode in, so I can sync the like traditional timecode with that to the sound recorder, so that'll sync up really nicely in the edit.
That was going to be my next question: is how do you sync it up using timecode or just a guide track on the to sync audio to audio? The other question I had is about for the Rails to Trails, your documentaries. Since you shoot mainly documentaries, are you finding an outlet for your work on streaming channels? Because I know a lot of the Amazon streams has specific areas for just documentaries. Are you finding an outlet there in streaming for your work?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's such a tough moment. I feel like there was like a huge expansion of the places. I mean, granted, since YouTube, right, we've been able to get our work out. The other part of that component is to what degree can it be kind of sustainably financed, So in this case, the Rails to Trails project, really they were able to get a lot of support from different people that supported those trails kind of across the country and want to see it out there. So really it's like in the case of that project, we're paying for it to be distributed through PBS as opposed to like the distribution paying us, I suppose.
Yeah.
And so that part of the equation is really, really tough. There's another project that I just completed in the last year called Cat City, which is about the feral cat policy in Chicago. And that we've been lucky to partner with a distributor out of New York called First Run Features. And with them, it's going to be on Canopy, which is a streaming service through libraries. It'll also be available on Amazon as a pay-per-view situation. But I mean, really with like a project like that, it's more from the reality of like how my business works, like a way to bolster our brand. So we're not really making any money on it. We're lucky that we haven't had to pay more for it. So like the distributors covering the E&O insurance for that, for example, which, would be probably a $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 expense if we were to try and cover that ourselves. But it's tough. So far as getting stuff out there,
documentaries are a very tough category to make to have a revenue stream off of. I know.
That's right, and that's really why our business model is much more these different partners hire us to do different strategic projects, and then we really see, for the most part, our original documentary work as a way to kind of flex our muscles, experiment with new techniques, as well as kind of get our name out there. And then there'll be, usually in any given year, I can count on like one hand, but a handful of other projects like the Rails to Trails projects, where I'll be able to be filming on like that and making a good wage. And I'm lucky when it comes across. In the Midwest, it's a real center of political activity this summer. So I was covering the RNC last week. We had 2 different crews covering different doc projects there. We're going to have 2 different crews maybe 3 crews covering different doc projects at the DNC in Chicago next week. So these things will come up from time to time. And with all those projects, none of them have distribution yet. So they're all things that independent makers are passionate about making documentaries, and then they'll hire us to provide production for them. And then we'll have some plan to have it with festivals or, something else to hopefully engage different.
And let's get back to one more question. Courtney, we're stacking up things here, and we also have more of your examples. So let's go to one more question, then we'll get to some more of your examples.
All right.
Sure.
From Jack Cannon in Phoenix, Arizona, he says, been in the world of documentary. What are your favorite tools for organizing your shots and organizing the story?
Yeah. I would say what we use most is probably this is not a very helpful answer. Google Drive.
I think that we've heard that a good little bit around from people doing organization because they can share it so easily.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, let me try and be more helpful there too.
Do you use any classic like 3x5 cards to shuffle scenes, or do you mark them in an NLE or some kind? How do you kind of get an idea of what is available as you're building the story?
Yes, both and. Those are 2 other great tools that we'll use quite a bit. I mean, so much of it is so project specific. With the projects we're editing now, like with Cat City, for example, yes, we did the whole card thing, the whole whiteboard thing. There's that project is very much like a not following one subject, but many different subjects. So like a course kind of situation. Thinking about the 3 acts and the subjects that would appear in each and reappear. So yes, a lot of markers as well in Adobe Premiere. The AI transcription software has also been like just so huge so far as being able to track through what you have and then refine things, that you forgot you had. If you can just plug in all that raw footage and have it transcribed, and then you can search for different keywords so that when, you want to plug in something else. So yeah, I guess that's been a newer tool that has really kind of changed the game so far as like how efficiently we can find different sound bites that we might want to plug in. I haven't played yet with really any AI tools that kind of analyze your shots or imagery, but I have read about that. I've heard about that as a technique, and it's something that I feel I should be using.
Do you want to show us another little piece of something that you've done, and then we'll go on to some more questions? We've got a good stack of them waiting for you. So show us something else. After the crash, if you don't have screen share, let me know, and we'll just
No, I do. I just need to open that back up, and I got it again. So let's see what else.
There we go. I see your grid.
Yeah, so I can go on to the next shot in here. So this was from a short documentary called Swimming Through that is distributed through the New Yorker. It was with another really talented director out of Chicago, Samantha Sanders. And so it follows a community of a couple of women that went swimming in Lake Michigan every day during COVID, including, as you see here, in the middle of winter. So this was a hole that they broke through the ice so that they could continue their streak. And so this was also shot on S1H. I believe I had the Sigma 24 to 70, the photo lens on here, just because I really only had a couple minutes to get as many different dynamic shots as possible. And so having a really small light rig that I could get literally right next to the water and also kind of quickly reframe based on where they were at was more useful here. And
sure, you're losing magic hour. How did you cue her to it's time to come up?
I didn't. This was all them. I just had to respond. And that's really what you asked why I like documentary. That's really the other half of what I appreciate about it so much, over the years. I also kind of growing up really identified as an athlete and love basketball and love being able to move quickly and respond. And I feel like that's so much of what I like about documentary as well, where it's like a physical challenge, being able to get the camera in the right place and not directing, the talent where to be, but okay, they're going to be here. Where do I need to be with the camera to get the shot? And then where do I need to be to get 3 or 4 shots before the situation ends that will cut together well? So yeah,
very cool.
So something like this was definitely indicative of it, getting the subject right where they wanted, getting the sun kind of popping through that shard of ice sticking up to get something really, really magical.
Nice. Very nice. Let's get a couple more questions in. Courtney?
All right. From Robert Shoji in Los Angeles says, what part of the filmmaking let me start again. What part of the filmmaking process do you enjoy the most and why?
You know what? When I'm not filming for many days in a row, it's definitely what I was speaking about when I'm out there operating. And that's really just so fulfilling, where you feel like it's like a flow state, and really everything is engaged so far as thinking about the narrative, collaborating. Most frequently, I'm working with a director who's kind of has a vision for the film, and so me getting to think outside myself, where they're coming from, what they want to capture, and why, and either in Chicago, and then I get to kind of show off my knowledge of my city and the different spaces and neighborhoods that I filmed at and locations that work well, or getting to travel and getting to discover a new place and learn from others. That said,
go ahead.
I just had a streak of 14 days in a row when I was filming, and so when I got home last week, I saw 2 crews on 53rd Street near where I live in Chicago filming, and I was not jealous. I said, you take Hyde Park. I am happy to be cutting for the next few days, having meetings with my team. So yeah, I like to be filming. Normally a couple days in a row is enough, and then I'm happy to get back, dig into the footage, be in air conditioning, chill out for a couple days.
Courtney, you had a question real quick?
Yeah, Ben, you said in your company, Truth and Documentary, you have 5 partners. Are there 6 of you all together?
Yeah. So currently I have a team. There are 4 of us right now. So it's myself, and then I have a producer primarily who's been full-time with me for about 4 years, Kyra Mitchell. It does really incredible work. She's also shoots quite a bit and edits quite a bit. And then Michael Del Rosario, who's also been with us going on 4 years. He's actually in New York right now shooting a music video, and he works a lot in that. In that space. And then we have another person, Ian Resnick, who's going on his 2nd year with us. And so, what will happen a lot is I'll often film stuff and then bring it back to them to edit, or when we're double or triple booked, they'll lead on other projects, and we'll add other folks on like freelancers to the team. But it's been great. I was really I was a bad manager when I started some 10 years ago, and through trial and error have learned, how to motivate others, build really good rapport, learn about my leadership style. It's been a learning process where now I can really say I feel confident as a leader and manager, and enjoy it. It's I feel like any creative media process, it's such a huge part of it, and learning like what works for you and your team's important.
Well, that was kind of what my question is. Do you divide up the duties, or does each one of you specialize in a different area? One in post-production or production, or directing or producing, etc. Or do you just compete for project and work on multiple projects with each other? That's
certainly right. A big part of our team and the kind of work we do is where we are everyone on the team could make more money other places, working in other kinds of projects. And so they're really there because they believe in the kind of work we're doing. And part of that, too, is that they're also there to grow. So we'll have like a weekly meeting where we take a look at what's in our pipeline and are just blunt about what people want to do. If they rather, Michael's the other team member that's the strongest shooter on our team. So kind of the default is if I'm not available to shoot something, he'll pick it up. But, oftentimes Kyra and Ian will be really excited about filming stuff. And so we'll kind of, tee it up for them to try it out and see how it goes. And then, similarly with the edits, we'll kind of divide up what all folks want to do, what they're interested in And, sometimes I need to put on my more like coercive leader hat, where it's like, you just have to do this, and try to strike a balance where it's just as much also being a affiliative leader, where it's kind of side by side, or a coaching leader, where it's more showing how to do work, or a democratic leader, where I guess like I was just saying, where we kind of decide together what we want to do. But
let's get back to the next question.
Yep.
Okay, so you all wear different hats. Dave Troutman in Edmonton, Ontario, Canada says, can you describe different projects that have a range of shooting ratio, and what's your nominal ratio?
Yeah. The old shooting ratio. Definitely. So the Cat City project, which is the most recent documentary just finished, I want to say we did about 100 hours on that, and it's 76 minutes long, and I feel like that's for the kind of longitudinal documentaries we make about the usual like rule of thumb to aim for in the 100-hour range or so, to really be able to follow subjects over multiple years and have like a lot of options for scenes. For a lot of the more like typical kind of work for hire we do, so like a really common model we'll do is like a 3 to 5 minute long like brand video for a nonprofit. So for most of those, we'll shoot about maybe 8 hours of footage. So it'll be maybe like 5-6 hours of interviews, and then maybe 2-3 hours of B-roll to cover it. So I'm trying to think if the deliverable for that is going to be 3 to 5 minutes. Whew. Maybe that's even higher ratio since it's so short. Oftentimes, so with that, those will also be strategic assets that they'll be pulling other social media clips for. We'll be making social media clips for them out of that. So and it'll be something that gets leveraged like down the line as well in other ways. I think similarly like a very high low ratio. I don't know. I think.
Do you ever supplement your own shooting with stock footage? Or
yes, we do. Yeah. So we do quite a bit of licensing. And where are the places we go the most? ArtGrid, Artlist, I think is a really good source. The other classic ones that also have like non-editorial options mixed in. Of course, Pond5, I feel like is the biggest fish in the lake now. And
Getty and some of those,
and then we also do share some of our work on those. During COVID, when everything stopped, I did quite a bit of filming in Chicago and uploaded it to a couple of those sites, and continue to kind of license
footage.
Those. Have I done any drone stuff? I don't think I have, but I should. It's always on the list of stuff to do, and we've just been lucky enough to be really busy enough since then. It hasn't haven't gotten to that point on the list.
Let's go to the next question.
Next question comes in from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. He says, what skills do you learn in school that you still use on every project? And what did you have to learn on the job?
Always an interesting question.
Yeah. Definitely the college skills, the collaborative one. So how do you how do you work with others, motivate a team? And I'll be blunt. I failed quite a bit in college, so a lot of it is kind of inverse, where it's like, okay, that didn't work again. I think I had a streak of projects too, where everyone was volunteering, and after the third or fourth of those, where after every project, at least one friendship ended. It's like, okay, from now on, you need to just be clear about the nature of the relationship up front and pay everyone. Because there's a reason that's kind of how most of the economy works. That's just a way to make things sustainable. Really, I studied theory in college and philosophy. So, I can't think of a single kind of technical skill I learned at the University of Chicago that I'm putting into practice now. Certainly stuff about composition. I mean, I didn't really study or make art or photography in high school. So the classic stuff about composition, rule of thirds, lighting, I suppose that is all stuff that I learned in college that I definitely use every day now. And, it's really the point where it's intuitive, where it's a lot of stuff that I just do without thinking. So those kind of classic I guess the term would be art history or visual art stuff. That's what I definitely use.
What was the level of technology when you started doing documentary filmmaking? Like when I started in filmmaking, everything was in 16 millimeter. You probably didn't have to deal with that.
No, we did.
You did?
We did. Yeah. So I did definitely just shoot on Bolex, and we had a CP16. And so, that's really what I learned on the first. And it was really great in the degree to which it forced me to think much more intentionally about
much
shot
narrower
selection.
ratio than you do today.
Oh my gosh, yes, definitely. And did I do any documentary projects on that format? No, I didn't. And so we did also have some mini DV things. So my first documentary projects were all on
digital
mini DV.
cameras to tape. Yes, that era. Thankfully, that era's gone.
Let's go on to the next question.
All right. Next one comes in from Robert Shoji in Los Angeles. What criteria to use when deciding on a documentary project?
Yeah. That is so huge. So I use an expression called the paradox of documentary filmmaking. Whenever you can find conflict, you cannot get access. And whenever you can get access, there tends to not be conflict. And so that's really the first or the highest kind of criteria I have, to find some strategy where you can have both those things together, where you have some kind of conflict, which, really I see as the engine of story. I've gone so far as sometimes in our office we'll ban the word story, because I feel like it's often so overused that most of the time when you're talking about that, you're really talking about conflict, the lack thereof, or the conflict doesn't feel appropriate or doesn't reveal itself or continue to build in a way that's compelling. So anyway, finding a place where you've got conflict and access through some novel strategy, whether it be the subject wants the conflict out there because maybe they're some kind of activist or in politics or something like that. Maybe they're in a business, and there is a need that their business is solving, and they, because of that, are okay to kind of air their dirty laundry and let it be in your narrative project. Maybe it's through some personal connection. I feel like there's such a a common kind of mold of documentary now that's like the personal documentary about you, about your family. And so obviously there you have access because you have that relationship that you're putting out there. So yeah, that's really the top criterion, thinking about how you're getting that access and really what the conflict is. Is it going to be enough to really power through a project, and warrant the unbelievable amount of time, energy, money that's needed to make a project that's going to break through and mean something to an audience.
So you have to find something to hang a hook on. And have you ever had a project where the hook changes mid-documentary, where you find something that's conflict erupts that's more interesting than the original concept?
Inevitably. Yeah. That's really something at this point I've learned. You have to go into the process expecting that, that it's going to be one thing at the start and you're going to have to pivot throughout it. When we made the Project Cat City, the initial vision was, okay, we're going to implant and follow these cat colonies around the city of Chicago, and we'll follow these cats over a couple of years and, see what they do. It'll be in the nature kind of genre. And after finding a few of these colonies and planting up a couple of days, I realized these cats are boring. They'll come out to eat, maybe once or twice a day.
Cat ladies of Chicago.
Right, but that's right. Really, the people that feed them and the policy around them and the folks involved in conservation and birding that don't want them there, that's really the whole universe that's more interesting, in the way in which all those issues and dynamics are a metaphor for other issues and dynamics in Chicago and really across the country, is both more compelling and also a lot easier to capture. Because I can just find those people and speak with them rather than waiting for 10 hours for the cat to show up and do something compelling. And kind of time and time again with most projects, that's what happens. You have one vision of what it is going in. And, I really like that kind of change in adaptation. That's what keeps it exciting for me. And, a lot of times that can be very frustrating to people that want more. Okay, this is our business plan for the project. This is what we're going to do, and stick with it. And most of the longitudinal documentaries I'm involved in don't follow that. It's more adaptive.
Let's go to the next question.
All right. From Tromsø, Norway, Ronnie Hofsey asks the question, can you remember a time where equipment quality was not important compared to just to get the content? How did you solve that need to record with substandard tech? Yeah,
that happens quite a bit. One of the other projects I've been working on the most this past year is for the World Marathon Majors. So it's a global organization of the top marathons in the world. So doing half an hour docs about different people running all 6 of these major marathons, often like overcoming challenges and whatnot. And so it's become apparent that it's really helpful to get footage of them running the actual marathons. And I can't run too far with a gimbal. I can do like maybe a quarter of a mile or so, but you don't know when the drama is going to happen. And so it's really adapted to where I'm using GoPros that sometimes we're putting on them, but more commonly I'm just filming all around with them. And so the stabilization is great on it, and obviously the weight, the range is nowhere near as good. I can't control the lensing as much, and so thinking about other ways that I can make more dynamic shots has been a cool challenge. And it's also introduced other opportunities where I can put the camera like really close to the subject or in different angles to do things that I couldn't do with a cine camera setup. Are
you using smartphones occasionally now?
Have I done much with smartphones? I haven't. It's something we've been talking about, though, for some other projects, just where having subjects kind of film stuff themselves. So, yeah, it is such a good tool for that. I guess during COVID, I did a lot of things like this, where would interview subjects over their computer, so kind of coaching them through where to set up their camera to get like the best light and a cool background. I honestly never had any issues with their computers overheating, so I've learned a great lesson today.
Don't work outside the sun.
Yeah, it's in the 60s up here in Wisconsin, but you're right. When you've got your laptop in the sun,
there you go.
That doesn't work. So, yeah.
Have you ever had to resort to surveillance video for something that happened that was not captured by you, but it was important to tell a story?
Yeah, I feel like I have. I'm trying to think of that circumstance or circumstances. Yeah, I might have to get back to you on that. No, I mean, there's been one or two situations where I've kind of posted up to get shots of folks like through my car. Yeah,
you ever go back and recreate an incident that you didn't have covered?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I really subscribe to the point of view of Errol Morris, who basically says, whatever I say is a documentary is a documentary. So, yeah, and part of it is how that's cued in the project, so you're presenting something closer to the entertainment genre than the journalism genre. And, so long as there's those cues within the piece that the work is not driven entirely by seeking truth and reporting it, being transparent, doing no harm, being independent, but you're kind of messing some of those, and it's cued as entertainment documentary accordingly, as opposed to as the most rigorous journalism in the world. I think that doing things like recreations is entirely fine. Yeah.
It gets
Let's
kind
go
of
to the next question.
In reality TV these days. All right, next question. Moving along. Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York says, I'm a big Rails to Trails supporter and go on our local trails often. What do you like about that project?
Oh my gosh. My favorite part has been what has been my favorite part? The first thing that comes to mind is just being on the trails. In that way, it's really been a dream project, being able to get paid to go and see these trails. I would have loved to just been biking them as opposed to riding on a Segway and having to frame up shots. But yeah, so that's been incredible. And just all the different trails kind of across the country, from one down in Brownsville, Texas, where it was over 100 degrees, kind of going across the border. We met a crew of cyclists that crossed the border from Mexico to ride the trail with us, to up in Burlington, Vermont, the trail that went out into Lake Champlain and was, just itself out there. So seeing the trails has definitely been the best part. And the second best part has been meeting the folks that were responsible for making them, and kind of their passion. And, the average rail trail takes 11 years to make, from the time that somebody has the idea until when it's available. And the folks from the Rails to Trails Conservancy share this. The average trail takes 11 years to make. It's 11 miles long. And what was the other thing? There was another thing having to do with 11. I want to say it costs $11 million. That might be much, but yeah, I mean, it's no easy task in most cases to get these things made, because often it involves like cool bridges that have been abandoned that need to be reinforced, and getting 14 different government agencies on board with it. So yeah, it's really been one of the projects that I've been most excited about. I'm so excited to get to share it next year.
Next question.
From Douglas Carmichael, he says, IMAX is investing in next-generation film cameras.
Really?
Do you think this is a response to a retro fad, or does film still have a place in a digital world?
I'm obsessed with large format. I feel like every month I will look and see if there is a medium format camera that makes sense for me to buy. So I would... I would love to shoot on IMAX or anything like that. And I certainly love full frame, but so much of what I like about documentary cinematography is that kind of like visceral feeling of being in a space. And I feel like, yeah, the larger your sensor, the more that you get that across. And that's one of the strengths of IMAX. I'm filming all the time. I'm running a business. I have a 9-year-old kid, so I'm disappointed I wasn't able to see Oppenheimer in IMAX, because I feel like when I watched it at home on streaming, it didn't have the same kind of impact. But yeah, I think that certainly makes sense. I mean, I think it's a question of, the arms race. It's only a matter of time before the sensors get kind of big enough, and the kind of digital workflows are big enough that a film won't be able to compete. But there's always that magic to it. The similarity with I love vinyl records as well. The not knowing what you're going to get till it comes out. So yeah, I'm sure there's always a place. Whether or not it can have the same kind of capital investments in any scale of digital video, though, I think it's not.
Getting the film processed these days is going to be problematic, and with hazardous waste disposal being a problem with that processing of $65.
Let's deal with our last question.
All right, last one comes in from Robert Shoji in Los Angeles. Says, what recent technology has had the greatest impact on your filmmaking work?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the what I mentioned before, the AI transcription has really, with like editing stuff, been so like, wow, just anything and everything. We can have that luxury, that tool to sort through things. And then what would be secondarily? I mean, we do a lot of live streaming too. So the better kind of ATEM, the Black Magic, I think has just made that so much easier, where we don't have to worry about syncing up frame rates, and are able to just so much more quickly kind of set up streaming situations. So yeah, those are probably the two things we've adopted most recently that have really just made things so much easier, quicker, and better.
Ben, it's really been a pleasure to talk to you today. We've run out of time. I thank you for showing up. I'm sorry we didn't get to see more of your work, but hopefully you keep us apprised of what you're doing out there. For the show, thank you to all of the producers today who asked the questions and put them into the queue so that we could address them. Thank you very much to all the panelists who show up every day and do this, and to our amazing back-end crew who manage this all around the world, coming in from all across the planet. We really appreciate everybody who makes Office Hours part of what it is every single day. Thank you for watching our Talktoversal today. We traveled 45,000 miles. That's how far we would have had to go to get all these answers and talk to all these people on the show through the course of the last 2 hours. That's 73,000 kilometers, or 358 million bananas for scale. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, Ben. Who was it that said truth 24 times per second? What's that?
Ooh.
Now they have to modify it. Truth 23.976.
976.
Yeah.
Drop frame is truth and drop frame or non-drop frame? That's the question.
Drop truth. Yes.
Yeah, I'm so sorry about the technical issue.
Stuff happens.
That's all right. We vamped and talked about trains and right-of-ways while you were gone. But
this is live.
Okay.
If people don't think it's live, it's live.
Right.
We do this live every single day.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's really so impressive, and as I shared, so glad that Kyle turned me onto it, because what an awesome community space thing you're doing. It's great.
It just accidentally